Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the AAA Show. I am your host, Jared Down. Big week. Couple good guests coming on this week. I got Mike Glawson, head coach, the Northwest Calgary Flames U18 AAA Hockey Club, as well as director of player development and head scout for the Canmore Eagles of the Alberta Junior Hockey League. So excited to talk some hockey with him. Part 2 of the show, we'll have Kevin Henry, the Western Elite Hockey Prospects, joining us to talk Saskatchewan AAA commitments and a little bit of an outlook on the 2021-2022 season. So without further ado, let's send it to Mike. Mike, thanks for joining me today. How's things out in Alberta?
Really good, Jared. No, thank you very much for having me on tonight.
Yeah, thank you. I heard last week, you guys got shut down again with hockey. Just kind of take me through those protocols and kind of what's going on now.
Yeah, directly in Calgary, they've gone to a 2-week shutdown here for COVID. We had been currently running, some elite skates in the Northwest there, April-May skates. So, a little unfortunate. I mean, especially through, what all the players and the families and coaches have been going through all year long. It was a little tough to get a little bit of momentum and then to have it shut down again. But, unfortunately, I mean, I think people are kind of, as tough as this might be to say, people are getting probably used to the on and off again. So hopefully we can get back started up here soon.
Yeah, no, for sure. You guys haven't had a luxury like Saskatchewan, been able to truck through and with limited ice sessions. What's the kind of off-season game plan with the uncertainty of? I know in Alberta, you guys are limited to your zones for recruiting and everything. Just kind of take me through trying to put together a team for next season.
Yeah, are you talking the AAA stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as it sits right now, I mean, my plan is to kind of go business as usual. Start putting together, what we believe is going to be a strong hockey team this year. Continue to go through the day-to-day stuff that we do, as an individual and as a coaching staff. Like I said, hopefully we're able to get back on the ice here in the next couple of weeks and continue to run our skates. But, for me right now as the head coach of the Flames, I mean, that's my sole focus is putting together the best plan possible going into the 2021 season there.
Yeah, unlike Saskatchewan, you guys have the U16 AAA and the U15 AAA. Is that kind of like one big unit for you guys down there? Is it a pretty tight relationship between head coaches and development there?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we don't talk daily, but I mean, we are in constant communication, right from our U15 AAA, right up to the U18 AAA stuff. And, obviously, I mean, I try to build as much of a network as I possibly can. I mean, obviously, I take Canmore into consideration when I'm doing that, trying to build relationships and, with coaches at a lower level so that we can, start, getting our fingers, on players, within our system and within other systems throughout Calgary. So, I mean, trying to make sure that everybody's in constant communication, I think is a plus.
Just for my curiosity's sake, is there a bit of movement that goes down between, let's say, the U16 and the U18 AAA team in a normal year?
No, not a whole lot. I wouldn't say a whole lot. I mean, obviously, I mean, for us, I mean, a lot of the stuff really depends on, injuries and stuff like that throughout a year. Depends on players kind of coming and going. I don't think that our team in the Northwest has had a 15-year-old make the hockey team in a couple of years, to be honest with you. And until last year, I was. Carter Yakimchuk, a Calgary Hitman draft pick, ended up making our team this year as a 15-year-old. And so that was probably the first guy to make that jump here in a few years. So, as I'm sure you're well aware, the players are getting better and better at a younger age, right? So, pretty tough to overlook those guys nowadays.
Yeah, it definitely is. And for a 15-year-old, how challenging is it as a head coach is to weigh the options of what's best for his development and whether or not him being in AAA will be beneficial over, say, a year of the U16 team?
Yeah, you know what, and I ran across that here. Really over the past 2 years. So, like, I just mentioned Carter Yakimchuk. Carter's a player who really stood out from day one in camp for us, and when he made our team, it's because we felt he fits somewhere in our top four as far as defenseman goes. And I mean, as much as we only got to play 5 games this year, I mean, he was in 5 games, he was quickly elevating himself into a top 3, top 2 status. So when you get a guy like that, I mean, it's a little bit of an easier decision to make. I did have that, last season with another guy, a 15-year-old forward, ended up being our last cut. And at the end of the day, the ultimate decision came down to, do I want to have a 15-year-old centering my fourth line, or to U16 AAA and playing a top 6 role, playing all sorts of situations. You really got to make sure that you're taking that stuff into consideration when you're looking at the players. I mean, I don't think it's good.
Oh, sorry, you cut out there for a sec.
Yeah, sorry. When you have the underage there, it's you got to make sure that you're putting them in a position to be successful.
Yeah, that's for sure. Overall, you said you got about 5 games in this year. How is the team looking? I know 1-4 record stats don't always say it all. Obviously, given the circumstances, it's a little more challenging. But what were your takeaways on the 5 games you did play this year, and how you felt they went?
Yeah, you know what? The games, yeah, a 1-4 record, which obviously, I mean, we obviously would have loved to have that scenario play out a little bit different, but I felt confident in the group that we had. I mean, it was probably going to take a little bit more time, for our guys to gel and get used to playing at that level, get used to playing at that speed and pace. The biggest thing that I try to do is I really evaluate through the first 10 games. And we're trying to give everybody opportunities to get penalty kill, power play time in, things like that. I really think it takes about 10 games before we can make a true evaluation. But like you said, this year was extremely tough. I mean, we would get going, then we'd get shut down, then you had to quarantine for a week, and so really tough to get momentum. Making excuses, by any means. I mean, everyone's in the same boat. But I was confident in our group for sure. I firmly believe we probably would have. We should have placed somewhere in the top 5, I would think, in the South.
Okay. Yeah, you look like you guys had, just kind of looking at the roster now, quite a few 03s. From someone that's kind of newly watching the league, how big is it to have that high of a veteran present on the team?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think if you talk to a lot of guys in the Alberta AAA league, I mean, they'll tell you it's a 17-year-old heavy league. And I found that my first year coaching it, I mean, we had a 17-year-old heavy team, and it benefited us, down the road when you get into those dog days in January and February, and there's nights when you really lean on the 17-year-olds to kind of pull your team through some things. So be really interesting this year because we've got a lot of really strong group of 15-year-olds coming up. Some 15-16-year-old class in the Northwest Calgary is looking very, very strong. So
Yeah, and the one thing I want to ask is, I know I was talking with a coach out of Saskatchewan here a couple of weeks ago when we kind of talked about COVID, and how you've seen so many signings over the past couple of weeks of 04s and 03s going to junior clubs, with juniors firing back up. And what do you think the overall outlook of the league is going to be next year in terms of age? Could you foresee a lot of those older guys kind of leading the junior route if the opportunity presents itself?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, especially with COVID going on, right? I mean, there's so much uncertainty, and I get that question, posed to me a lot. Not only as a coach, but as a head scout for a junior A hockey team, and always got people kind of calling, wanting to know, hey, what's best for my player. There again, I think you got to look at the situations, and again, I don't know if a player's looking to jump to junior A hockey as a 16 or 17-year-old, but there again is going to be that 12, 13, 14th forward, is that in the best interest of the player? So, again, Andrew and I in Canmore, for example, I mean, we have these conversations almost on a daily basis, right? So, I could see definitely the AAA midget league. I could definitely see it potentially being a little bit younger this year for sure. Maybe more of a 16-year-old league. So.
Yeah, and upon the team, how do you kind of distinguish what's kind of best for you and best for the U16 team? I know you kind of want both to be competitive, but at the same time, you want to pull the best players you can for your AAA club. So how do you kind of coordinate that and just kind of feel that situation out?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we obviously go through a lengthy process with our tryouts, and at the end of the day, as the flagship hockey team, I mean, we want the best players available to us. We obviously want to try and field a competitive team. There again, like we've spoke about before, I mean, keeping in mind obviously that we want to make sure that we're putting players in a position to be successful. So, we I try to take as much time as I possibly can when I'm making my decisions through the tryout process. Sometimes maybe the teams that are a little bit below us, the U16 AAA teams and the U18 AA teams, sometimes that maybe hinders them in their tryout process because they're waiting for us to release guys. We try to do our due diligence as much as possible so that we're making the right decisions, not only for our hockey team, but for the players as well.
Yeah, that's I could see how the double A teams now be a little bit not necessarily frustrated with the process, but they obviously understand. But
Yeah.
it's tough to pick a player out when you're waiting on those AAA clubs to make the decisions. But at the same time, you want to make the proper decision. I just want to go back to last year's season. You had a pretty good run with your first year with the Calgary team. Just kind of take me through that season and how everything played out.
Yeah, we had a strong dressing room, first and foremost. I mean, the guys that we had in that dressing room there were, we had multiple leaders in there, which I think plays a big part in a hockey team, the culture that's in the dressing room. As coaches, we can always teach the X's and O's, we can teach the structure and systems on the ice. We say that you can't always teach a good hockey player to be a good person, right? So, that's something that we really strive to look for. We're looking for good people. We're looking for guys that love being at the rink, that want to get better, that are coachable. Like I said, we can teach the stuff on the ice. And that group I had the first year, guys like Caden Smith, who's now in Canmore, Owen Dean, who's in Camrose, Tyson Gross, guys like that, Ethan O'Halloran and Brooks, just a solid veteran group that just got it. And when we got on a roll, through our season and kind of started to climb that ladder in the standings, I mean, there was no turning back for those guys. They were pretty focused and determined and didn't really have to, say a whole lot in the room.
Yeah, in the division final loss, just kind of take me through the playoffs and what do you say to the boys after a tough final loss like that?
Yeah, you know what I mean. Obviously, coming up against the Calgary Buffaloes, I mean, Brent Harrison and those guys do such a great job over there with that organization, and they're in the mix every year, right? I mean, they're the measuring stick in Calgary or Southern Alberta, really, to be honest with you. And we were confident. We were definitely confident going into that final series. We had played the Calgary Buffaloes twice in league play. We beat them both times, so we felt that we had a group that could get it done. There again, credit to the Calgary Buffaloes. I mean, when it came, do or die time. I mean, they knew how to get it done, right? So, For our group too, I mean, I give our guys credit because they fought right to the very end. But, as the saying goes, I mean, sometimes you got to learn how to lose before you can learn how to win.
Yeah, and like you said, you learn to lose before you got to win. And how many returning players do you have from that squad? And how do you walk through, say, those older guys who didn't get to finish a job last year, and this might have been their final year at AAA, and they only get 5 games in. And I know you had a lot of players that were able to go on to the Alberta Junior Hockey League, but how do you keep their heads held high during COVID and just kind of keep the morale up?
Yeah, I mean, I think we ended up having 4 or 5 returning players for this year, and obviously, one of the things that we're trying to build in the Northwest, or I'm trying to build in the Northwest since coming over and taking over the flagship team is we want to try and help our players get to the next level, and that's the end goal. I mean, hey, don't get me wrong. I mean, we'd love to win a championship. We'd love to go to a TELUS Cup. That's the goal every year. But the biggest thing for us is setting that tone, setting that culture within our dressing room, within our organization, that we want to try and put players in the best position possible to be successful. And so, that's really the motivation for a lot of our players. And I have the luxury of obviously being the head scout of a junior A hockey team. And so, whether this is right or wrong, I mean, I dig into that pretty early on in the process when I make my final roster. We dig into that with our players right off the bat. What are your plans? What do you want to do next year? If it is junior, we want to know that stuff early so that we can start promoting our players. And so that's kind of the motivation for our players. And that's what I'm seeing with the kids in the Northwest is that, they want to make that hockey team. They're seeing the number of players that we're signing year in and year out now. And so guys are pretty motivated coming in there, wanting to earn a spot on that hockey team because they know that that's going to put them in the best position possible to potentially get an opportunity at the next level.
Yeah, and you mentioned, sitting down with them, figuring out where they want to go. Just kind of for someone new to kind of following the league, with it being kind of a second and third year team, I know a lot of your players are probably looking more the AJ or the BC or the college route. How does that, I guess, play into a factor of development, and just kind of take me through that?
Yeah, it is. I mean, developing the players to play at the next level. Again, obviously I have the luxury of being around a lot of junior hockey, being involved with Canmore. So, I have a pretty good idea and understanding what the junior A, whether it's the AJHL, the BCHL, or the SJHL, have a pretty good understanding of what those coaches are looking for. So it's easy for me to kind of hone in on some of the skill sets that are needed in order for our guys to play at that next level. As far as the Western Hockey League stuff goes, and that's probably coming up here over the next couple of years. I mean, I think this next group of kids that we got coming up this year, I think we've got 7 or 8 Western Hockey League draft picks that are going to be trying out for our team this year, and guys that are pretty highly touted to potentially go the Western Hockey League route. So, I think staying in communication with with Western Hockey League teams, I try to reach out through my network through the Western Hockey League as much as I possibly can, and talk to these coaches and see what is needed out of these players in order for them to be able to make that jump to their team in the next 1 or 2 years.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to transition now to kind of your relationship with Canmore and being a head scout for them. How do you, I guess, manage that and being a head coach, and kind of just take me through how those two kind of combine, and almost maybe does it give it an advantage you feel, or how does it impact your process?
Well, I mean, how I manage is obviously is a good support staff. To be honest with you, I mean, we've got a number of area scouts throughout Alberta. We've got some eyes in Saskatchewan. We've got some eyes in British Columbia, and I'm in sales by trade, and so one of the things that I've had to do over the last 25 years in sales is the ability to communicate in order to put food on the table for my family. So, communication, I talk to my players about communication is huge, at our level and at the next level. It's huge as a coach too. And so, obviously being in constant communication with our area scouts, what they're seeing out there, obviously in that U18 AAA league that I coach in, I get to see every single team play. I've got a pretty good relationship with all the coaches throughout the league. So it's pretty easy for me to pick up the phone and call Ryan in Leduc, or, give Tony a call up in Edmonton with the CAC team. And those guys are very open with their players and where they stand and are they players that can play at the next level. So, communication is absolutely huge, and having a good support staff around me is key for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned the CAC squad. For a province that has a little more schools, I guess, in the Canadian Prep League versus us here in Saskatchewan. What's it like kind of having to compete against those programs and for talent? I'm not sure what the regulations are around pulling players in the Canadian Sports School Hockey League, but just kind of take me through that.
Yeah, it is a challenge. I'm not going to lie. It's, that's a conversation that I've been having with a few people in our association here. This year is, we've got, the NAXs, the OHA Edmontons, the Calgary Edge School, Rink Academy. There's those guys do a great job of recruiting, and obviously, they have the ability to go out and recruit, where as in our quadrant hockey, which we call it here in Calgary, we don't have the ability to go out and try and solidify players before tryouts, right? So it can be challenging for sure. You've always got, those school teams. They're always after the top end talent, right? So sometimes it can be a little frustrating as a coach. And we've definitely lost some players here over the last couple of years. That would have been nice to see them in a Flames jersey, but we can only control what we can control at the end of the day.
Yeah, and just kind of going over the quadrants. Here in Saskatchewan, it's a wide open game. For you, probably have a lot on your slate. It's almost probably easier for you to have to stick to your zone versus having to both run the Canmore scouting department and scout for your team. So just kind of take me through how you evaluate how many kids you can bring in and all that.
Yeah, as far as Canmore goes, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Canmore, there again, Andrew, our head coach and GM, him and I are in constant communication all the time. We want to try and have a healthy spring camp every year. Where we have the ability to get eyes on as many players as we possibly can, and obviously through getting guys to spring camps, and that we usually hold two every year. Get the ability to get eyes on as many guys as we possibly can, and then kind of weed through that process in order to get it down to more of a main camp. More of a main camp with our veteran guys. We're trying to, I think we're trying to, this year is going to be interesting to see what happens if we can even have spring camps or whatnot, and try and weed it down to, potentially 30 or 35 guys to bring to main camp. But it can definitely be a challenge for sure, with me coaching this team. And, obviously when you get coaching at these levels, it takes up a lot of time, and, doesn't free me up all the time to get out, do as many games as I'd like to scout. And like I said, knock on wood, I'm pretty fortunate that I have the guys that I have underneath me in Canmore that get out and are pretty diligent about reporting back.
Yeah, and what are you thinking for the Canmore team going forward for next year? I know they didn't take part in the return to play this year. For kind of trying to grab more guys that maybe weren't loaned out or bring in new guys, what's the process like when you have essentially a restart for next year?
Yeah, and that was a struggle for sure. Andrew and Daryl Lockwood, our president there in Canmore. I know that they had a lot of sleepless nights before they came up with that decision to, to opt out, and it wasn't an easy one. And Andrew and I have had that conversation numerous times, but you know what I mean, we've got a pretty, good core group of guys there still that are eligible to return. We have loaned some players out to some other teams to give them every opportunity to go play and continue to get evaluated and looked at by post-secondary educational opportunities. So, I think we've done some pretty good signings already as well. We've got the Pilling kid coming in. We've got the Biddick kid coming in, Jack McEwen from the Calgary North Stars. Emmanuel Hudson, as a Medicine Hat Tigers draft pick. We just signed him here recently. So, I think we're doing a pretty good job kind of wading through everything right now through the COVID season. Unfortunately, I mean, you're not able to get your eyes on a lot of people, but again, I mean, the ability to talk to as many people as we possibly can that we trust, and we trust their hockey knowledge, and we trust their opinion when it comes to players. I think everybody's in the same boat right now.
Yeah, and it's definitely a unique situation. And one more thing before I kind of let you go, I just want to get your opinion on this. I had a trainer on the show last week, and he was just talking about the impact this season might have on the leagues next year. And he felt that with the amount of time players are able to spend working on the fine parts of their game, that it should elevate all leagues across Canada going forward for next year. Take me through what the competition might look like for next season.
Yeah, I know. I would agree 100%, and I think you combine that with what you just said. You combine that with people coming in highly motivated, right? I mean, a lot of kids didn't get to play this year, so guys are going to be highly motivated to come out and want to make a statement, right? So, I know, we potentially have 3 or 4 kids that are eligible to return to our hockey team this year, and I can tell you, I mean, they're already, pretty pumped to get on the ice. I mean, they were kind of wishing training camp was starting tomorrow, but I think our league as a whole, the U18 AAA league through Alberta, I think is going to be extremely strong. I think it's going to be a very, very competitive. I don't think you're going to see a ton of separation in the South and the North between teams, 1 to 6. I think everything's going to be pretty tight. Obviously in Alberta too, I mean, the U16 AAA, they've gone to 1 team as well per quadrant. So that league is going to be exceptional this year. I think how that league is going to play out here this year is it is going to get even heavily scouted more than what it has in the past. I mean, it's just the ability to combine, everybody onto 1 team rather than having 2 separate U16 teams it's going to be some fun hockey to watch.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier in the show with the possible draft, WHL draft eligible players that could potentially be in your squad next year. This will be the first year that kids of prospects of the WHL are going to have to go through a draft process mid-season. How do you think those players are going to handle? It's obviously going to add some added pressure. You're playing in October, November, December is going to be more heavily watched. And how do you think the kids that young will be able to handle that kind of pressure?
Yeah, I mean, I think for coaches, coaches that are going to be coaching these players, I mean, you gotta, again, hockey is, how you coach it nowadays is way different than it was 5, 6, 7 years ago, right? And, now you have to build relationships with players. You have to build trust with players, right? So, I think if you get the right coaches around these kids that can kind of keep them even keeled, keep them focused, keep them, moving in the right direction is going to be huge. Every player, especially the young guys, right? Everybody has their ups and downs. It's how you help them kind of manage through that. And it's tough, right? Because these poor guys, sometimes these kids, they've got everybody pulling at them these days, right? And obviously I see it as a scout. You got scouts wanting to talk to you. You got mom and dad at home kind of telling you how things need to be. Your coach wants things done a certain way. A lot of these kids at a younger age too now, right? I mean, guys are getting into advisors at age 13 and 14, right? Those guys, they want their say too, right? So I think trying to keep players grounded, trying to keep them, even keeled and focused and determined, I think can alleviate a lot of that.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I know you. One more thing before I let you go. I know you kind of touched on it earlier, but for those watching, just what to expect of your club next year and how you think the season will go.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Obviously, fingers crossed that the season does go, and I'm very excited for this group that's upcoming. I mean, like I said, we've got some great young kids that are coming up. We've got a good group of 4 or 5 veterans that are eligible to return. Our U18 AA programs were strong last year. There's a number of 17-year-olds that are going to be pushing for spots. I'm very excited about this year's group. I think that we have a team that can push to do something special if we can get everybody on the same page early and keep that consistent. I know that sounds cliche, but a lot to look forward to with this group that's coming up this year and even the next 2 years for sure.
Yeah, well, awesome. Well, I hope we get some hockey this fall. It was a long winter without it, and I want to thank you for joining me on the show, and best of luck for next season if we get going, and maybe we'll have you on next week mid-season to talk about the season and how it's going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on, Jared, and hope everybody out your guys' way is good, and knock on wood, hockey's back soon.
You betcha. All right, thanks, Mike.
Yep, take care.
Welcome back, everyone. That was Mike Glawson, head coach of the Northwest Calgary Flames U18 AAA club. Before the break there, we talked a lot about the program and, his experiences with the Canmore Eagles, as he's also the head scout and director of player personnel, And but our next guest, I'll have Kevin Henry joining me of the Western Elite Hockey Prospects. We'll talk a little insight of Sask AAA commitments so far and kind of an outlook on the 2021-22 season and that much more. So with that, I'll send it to Kevin. Kevin, thanks for joining me tonight. How are things in your way?
Oh, hi, Jared. Thanks for having me on the show. It's a regular evening here in Saskatchewan. We don't know if it's going to snow or if it's going to be sunshine here. It seems like it's going back and forth day to day here. I don't know. It can't make up its mind whether it wants spring to actually be here officially or if we're going to head back in the fall.
Yeah, it's screwing with my golf plans. You wake up every morning and, one day you might be able to golf. The next day you get a couple inches of snow on the ground. Like, what the heck? But typical Saskatchewan weather.
Yeah, for sure.
But just before we kind of dive into commitments here, is for those watching that kind of don't know what you do and who you are, I want to give me a brief rundown of everything for me.
Well, I originally had I had always sort of helped the founder of Western League Hockey Prospects sort of in the background with kind of getting in contact with players and families, and it just sort of built from there. And over time, he asked me to do more and more as time went on, and then I guess you could say I got more into a scouting role, and that sort of filtered off into other scouting opportunities, and I didn't really want to commit to anything officially. And even this, truthfully, this kind of happened too. I guess by chance you could say, and it was over tragic circumstances because the owner, the original owner founder passed on. But I've just always sort of been one of those guys in the background that have connected the dots for some of the regional scouts and some of the guys to send out to look at players and kind of made sure the right people got information. And that's truthfully how it all built. And then after Tyler passed away, his family approached me about taking it over because they knew I'd helped them. And there was a few people here in Saskatchewan that had really worked hard with him behind the scenes. And they felt that I was maybe the best fit because I seem to get along with him the best. I'm not saying that other people didn't get along with him at all either, but it just sort of seemed to be a progression for me all the way through. And I sort of was unwilling, at first I was sort of an unwilling participant, but over time I really learned a lot about scouting and learned the craft and talked to people and just sort of picked the senior guys' brains about it and tried to kind of be a sponge and learn as much as I could over the past, especially the past 4 or 5 years for sure. So yeah, it's been a bit of a whirlwind these last 2 months, obviously, with everything that happened and the unfortunate circumstance where Tyler passed away. But I'm hoping to carry on the tradition and you'd be able to use it as a platform to help young players and families connect, get them, I guess, the exposure they need. So if they want to continue their hockey careers, they hopefully can get to those levels.
Yeah, and exactly. And I'm glad you're liking the role now that you get a little more adapted to it. And your first commitment season, I guess, with loads of commitments happening the past couple of weeks. Lots to talk about in this episode, and just want to get your initial thoughts on the overall the signing so far.
The signings here in Saskatchewan, I know it's been this has been of course, because of COVID, right? Everything has really been thrown for a loop. But the positive side out of all of this is that for the 06 group, it has opened the door for opportunity for them. I think we're seeing a higher number of players that would be signed than what we normally would see being signed. And to be fair, the 2006 group in Saskatchewan is very, very deeply talented with some high-end elite talent players that I truly believe we're going to be watching one day, when we're watching Sportsnet or TSN and they're going to be playing for whatever professional NHL team. It's that deep, this group. The 2005 group I thought was one of the hallmark groups for Saskatchewan ever, and we had a wealth of players out of Saskatchewan drafted last year. In the 2006 group, they might be right on par with those guys the way it's shaping up. I really, really like the depth. As a matter of fact, I believe I think we could see 4 to 5 players in the first round just out of Saskatchewan, with 4 coming out of Saskatoon alone.
Yeah, well, I know from doing the shows in the past, and you right now all we can do on the AAA show, for me personally, who's kind of new to covering the league, is you're kind of just going off stats. And that's kind of all you can do at this point with no live hockey. And I know a lot of times I was referring back to, some of these kids that would have played with the 06 group last year. And, there was a lot of 06 kids that are right up in the standings. And some of those 05s that were drafted high were below these 06s in points. So it's going to be exciting to see where they fall in the draft.
I'm really excited to see. Of course, you have Berkeley Cadden out of Saskatoon, he's absolutely phenomenal. And I know there was an academy out of Minnesota. There was 1 or 2 out of BC that have tried to kind of obtain Berkeley for this season. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I believe the contacts are going to re-sign Berkeley, and Berkeley is just like he's as advertised. The kid is phenomenally skilled. He reminds me a lot of if you could sort of put a hybrid between Brain Yager and Riley Height, he's sort of in between them, where he can play gritty when needed, but it's not necessarily his game. But Burke will stand up for himself, and I really like that about him. And of course, he's such a natural goal scorer, and his skating is phenomenal. He knows to go to the open lanes. Like, he seems to find open ice. And there's just something to be said about a kid that seems to find the mesh every time he gets in that red zone. And Berkeley's one of those players. You you get him into that offensive zone, and he just takes his game up to another level. Having said that, he is defensively good too. Like Berkeley is a complete player. There's no doubt in my mind that Berkeley is the real deal. And I've been lucky enough where my son Dane Henry played with Berkeley in the Red Wing zone in Saskatoon, and they played a little bit spring hockey right from Timbits up. And so I've been lucky enough to see Berkeley progress throughout his minor hockey all the way through. And he was a special kid even back in Timbits. You could just see it. He just sort of had that it factor, and every time he touched the puck, he made something happen. Even at that level, when they're just supposed to be having fun, there was Berkeley going around everyone, scoring at will. And it was, and truthfully, I don't think much has changed since. The kid's just phenomenal. And then you add the other top end elite players out of Saskatoon, like Roger McQueen. That kid, without a doubt, Roger is. If Berkeley's the clear one, Roger, I would put Roger McQueen, Tyson Buchikowski, and even Braden Zacharias is one with a big A behind it, because they're not exactly a step back for the programs that will draft them. Phenomenally skilled players, all three of them. Roger he's got a heavy shot. He skates well. He's 6'3" now. There was questions about his physicality a couple of years ago because he went up as a underager into when he was called Bantam. And he didn't really struggle, but I think he was shy. Because he didn't seem scared to me. He just seemed maybe a bit shy and timid and unsure of what he was supposed to be doing on the ice. And that can happen when a kid is pushed up maybe, but there's no doubt in my mind, like we played them twice last year with the 05-06 group out of Prince Albert, and wow, Roger just he's a pleasure to watch. Skates well, quarterbacks, the power play. He can be the F4. He can play D. He can play center. And his natural spot is a centerman, and he's a nice skater, heavy shot. I think for sure there's no doubt he's going to play in the dub and higher in the NHL. Those two for sure. Tyson Buchikowski, there's another player out of Saskatoon. I think he had 52 points last year as a D-man with the 05-06 group. And honestly, Tyson he reminds me of his dad. I mean, except bigger. Like Paul was sort of like me, where he's not very tall. Paul, I believe, is around 5'8", 5'9". Tyson is a big kid. He's around that 5'10" to 6 foot mark, and he looks like on the ice. Well, he plays like he's 200 pounds. I believe he's around 175, 180ish range. And Tyson is just. I mean, when you're talking about building a championship team, to me, that Tyson Buchikowski is the name that you should be penciling in on that list, because championships are built from the back end out, in my opinion. And an offensive-minded D-man that can play strong both ways, that is good on his first pass, or can find the open lane to create something. I mean, that's worth its weight in gold. I guess you could sort of, the comparable to him, I would say, would probably be Braden Schneider. I would think, because he plays a similar style game, and Tyson's aggressive like him too. So I see a lot of similarities between Tyson and Braden, and Braden's career so far has turned out pretty good. So I think that bodes well for Tyson. And then obviously you have between Roger and Tyson, you look at their dads, like Scott McQueen played, I believe, with Red Deer for 3 or 4 years, and he went to the U of S. And then I believe Paul was with the Blades for, I believe, 4 or 5 years, and was in the Flames system for a while, and then he went to school. So I mean, they're just their kids are just carbon copies. Like they're just, it's nice to see the next generation of kids coming up like that, especially when they're so skilled, and they're just nice to watch overall. And then you get a player like Braden Zacharias that, about 4 or 5 years ago, you could see he had skill, but all of a sudden, and Raiden always played a bit of an aggressive game, and all of a sudden he started to thicken up, started to grow, and he just got stronger, and his skating got faster. And Raiden is, I love the way that kid plays. He's thick, he's strong in the puck, he can move fast, he's got high IQ. He's phenomenal. I'm big on power forwards, because I think if you're looking at a championship team, there's only so many players like Berkeley out there. And if you look at the 05 group that has a phenomenal top end with Bedard and Height and Yager, I mean, there's a reason why those groups are phenomenal with that many top end guys, because it's just not common, right? But the 06 group has quite a few that are that way. These players are all based out of Saskatoon. So, I mean, that speaks volumes about what families are doing for development in Saskatoon and the programs that are developing out of Saskatoon. So, I mean, yeah, I really like those four. And then you add the other players out of Saskatoon, like Trey Wilkie, Tyler Phipps, Logan Pickford, those three there for sure. Riley Ash from Warman. You look at Cole Pearden, like any of that group on any other year, you take that group of players, that group would easily be pushing in the first, that could easily be arguable to be in the first round. But in a draft year like this, we have that kind of depth. I mean, that just shows you, that just speaks volumes of how good this 06 group really is, and outside of those 4 or 5, I mean, the next group of 4 or 5, I would have no hesitation taking any of those kids, especially the one out of that group, actually 2 out of that group that really stand out to me are Trey Wilkie, because he has he has basically a pro level shot, and Cole Pearden, really cerebral, nice 2-way player, and I watched him in spring hockey, and he had some genetic issues with his knee. Just his body was growing too fast, and he just had growing pains essentially that held him off for a month or 2. And but geez, the times I saw him play, he's just a phenomenal player. Very, very nice player. So
yeah, and almost all those players that you just mentioned committed to the Blazers. So that's going to be, just kind of take me through what it's going to be like to have all those players in the same team interacting in a midget or a U18 AAA league, essentially.
I had a chance to chat with Cole Shepard, the GM for the Blazers today, and we were kind of just shop talking about their team. And I fully admitted to him, I said, if you can get that group to mesh, which I believe they will, because most of them played on the 2006 Brick team, and the ones who didn't, well, they're all in an age where they're all going to band together, I think, pretty fast. That 2006 group, once they get rolling, I don't see, like, they are going to be a tough team to play against, because they're not only going to be high-end skilled, because if you look at McQueen, Buchikowski, Phipps, Wilkie, Pearden, you add them, you got Zacharias. I mean, then you still got players outside of that group that are still very, very strong that they have in there. And I don't know who ends up even challenging that group, especially by the second half of the year, because the draft will happen in December, and then we'll see how these players adjust in the second half. But if the Saskatoon Blazers get rolling, oh boy, they are going to be one heck of a team to play against. And like, I look at where Dane went, my son, to Battleford, and we have Dawson Gerwing, Trayson Watney, obviously my son Dane Henry, and we got Owen Dick, and those are all really solid players, But to take a team, and we're going to have veteran presence with a veteran goalie. We're going to have our veteran goalie play his A game and try to win almost like a New Jersey Devils style of hockey game against a team like that, and try to keep them against the wall to slow them down. Because if they get anything to the middle and they get open lanes, they're all phenomenal skaters. They're all fast. You are going to be tired chasing them all over the ice that night, because I mean they're just that good. I mean they're simply that talented and that good. And Cole said this, his coaches and everyone really spent a lot of time trying to be aggressively recruiting, and it shows. It absolutely shows. I think that is probably going to be, if it's not the team to beat, they're going to be right up there. I really like them going into the season this year. Even their backup, Eric Kale, 2006 goalie, like they'll have Alex Garrett starting, but Eric Kale he'll be able to step in, and he can be mentored plus get games. And he's going to be on a top team where there's no pressure for him to have to win games. So it's a win-win for him, even as a goaltender, to develop in that environment. And and winning is, it's funny how winning will elevate players even developmentally, because when with the winning comes the confidence, right? And when they're confident, things just start rolling. And I don't see how anyone touches that team even by the second half, unless one of the veteran teams like the Patsies will be strong. And I don't know outside of Pat's season. We'll see how the contacts do, because the contacts have, if they have Berkeley, you have Kanye Wong, you have Logan Pickford, who I really like. Logan's an excellent 2006 forward. Everyone has good a good core group of 2006 players, but I'm not sure everyone will have the depth that the Blazers have. Because when the Blazers, when you're looking at their lineup and how, kind of strategically looking at how their lines will run, I mean, they essentially could be like the Sask contacts were last year, where they could almost have, it's arguable they could put out 4 first lines.
And looking at their roster, they have 10 06s, and from what you've been saying, that 10 is all of the upper caliber of the class. So you mix that with some experience and let them run.
Well, absolutely right. They're thoroughbreds, and you got to let them go, right? I believe that Saskatoon Blazers, and I told Cole Shepard this day, what they did was very strategically smart, and it's not only going to help them win; it helps with recruitment. Like when I do the comparables and I look at how the CSSHL has had some strong teams, and you got your NAXs, and you got your OHA, and you got the big academies or rink that seems to put together good, solid teams. I don't know any team that has had 3 first rounders, and possibly as many as 10 draft picks on one team off the same year. I think it's unprecedented. I told Cole that I think it's unprecedented. I'm not sure if there's going to be a player that isn't drafted. You take a player like Luke Dolan, who would be a little bit further down their lineup, but Luke is a really good hockey player. Luke he's a fast skater. He's high IQ. He'll work hard. He can score. And that kid is going to be probably ballpark, maybe third, maybe arguably fourth line. And on another program that doesn't have the depth of talent, he's arguably third, maybe second line. But on a team like that just shows you the depth of that team. And if you get a player like that in your third or fourth line, I mean, what does that say how strong they are? I'm not sure. I know, and I don't work for the Saskatoon Blazers, just to be clear about that. But I look at their lineup and I just think, wow, like that to me, they did a great job with it, really good job. And then you look at Saskatoon contacts, right? Even with their goaltending situation, will Hildebrand stay or will he be with the Raiders? Hilty probably, I think he could be with the Raiders. It's going to depend on what happens, for them with their goaltending, because I believe Paddock is done and Sarienko probably will be their number one, and that probably means Hildebrand moves up, and so the 2006 goalie Chase Wutsky will be their either starter or backup, or I'm not sure what's going to happen there with that program. But like Chase is a really good goalie, and his cousin Ryland Pronto was a draft pick with the Raiders. And Chase should do well there, but I definitely think when I do the comparables between the teams, I like Eric's situation a bit better with the Blazers, not because I think the contacts are any less of a team. I just think Chase will get put into a situation that might be more pressure filled versus Eric, who can kind of sit back, soak it in, kind of learn. Because ideally, as 15-year-olds in a normal year, 15-year-olds are, they're not usually the go-to players. It's sort of their mentorship development year, because you have your 2-3 years. And, by that second year, if it's your second year of U18, then that's when you get put into that pressure role, and then you're ready to move on to junior, so to speak, right? If you look at how the progression of most programs like to do it. And, Chase, I think, will be okay in those pressure situations. I would just like to see him be mentored a bit more. And obviously, I think Hildebrand's a really, really, really solid goalie. I'm hoping he comes back and Chase can kind of learn from him, because that's just a better – that will be a better situation for Chase, who's still developing, and I believe he's right there. He's right there, and he's definitely going to be a good goalie, and I see him in the mix getting drafted for sure. But I like his odds better when he's mentored for a year and he's put in, kind of eased into it versus thrown into it, right? Especially for goalies, because it's so goaltending is so touchy. And I mean, you have your goaltending coaches, you have your your skill coaches, your hockey coaches, but goaltenders are just cut from a different cloth. And the mental side of the game for them it matters. It 100% matters that much more than everyone. And we all think it matters for players. Well, yeah, goalies don't usually do well thrown into the fire. Not everyone's a Carey Price in those situations, but I think Chase will be fine. I'm just stating the fact that I like Hildebrand. I'm hoping Hildebrand comes back and can kind of mentor him. That's what I'm sort of hoping for Chase. I think it's a better situation for him if that happens.
Yeah, no, for sure. And one thing I want to ask is, out of the 06 class, how many of these guys do you think could possibly be a one and done in the U18 AAA league?
Yeah, I'm going to say probably, I would think those top four for sure. And it won't surprise me. Like Berkeley technically isn't really one and done because he was with the Contacts this past year, even though they had a handful of games. It won't surprise me if you see those 3 or 4 first rounders gone after Christmas. It actually won't surprise me at all, depending on kind of what happens with life and society with the COVID stuff. But I think the one and done it could be 4 for sure, as many as 8 to 10.
Wow.
And if that happens, well, even moving forward, you got to think about it, right? Because a lot of the 2002s, there's a lot of those players, and even the old ones that they're done hockey. They're just saying, well, the COVID has knocked me out of hockey for a year and a half, and they're moving on in their life. And these younger kids are going to just be getting opportunities that maybe might not be there in those situations, but moving forward, I believe they will be there. And the reality is they're good enough. I mean, the dub teams or the junior A teams won't pull them up there if they didn't think they weren't good enough in the first place. But there's no doubt in my mind that these players will be good enough, without a doubt.
Yeah, it's a strong class, and like you said, you reiterated so many times already. It's going to be interesting to see how they match with the Contacts, and even if, say, they lose half of those after a year, that's still going to be a heck of a team going forward with the amount of depth they've acquired already. I was looking at the roster. They only got 2 04s right now and a handful of 05s. So, and that roster could be dangerous to go in the next coming years.
I think so for sure. And then you look at provincially, right? Most of the teams seem to be following the usual template of, you got your 3 or 4 first-year players and that. And you take a team like the Mintos, who have Ashton Tate, Jaden Krause, and is it Scott McLean? I believe it is. I believe it's Scott McLean. I mean, and McLean is a really nice offensive-minded D-man. You got Ashton Tate, who I strongly believe could be possibly a second-round dub pick. I know on the rankings he's around 50th, 54th, but I don't believe that's accurate. I think Ashton has a serious upside, and I believe Ashton is going to be he's a player that sort of has fallen behind the shadow of some of these players, and I don't know if it's accurate that he's fallen behind them. I think Ashton is the real deal. That's another kid that definitely is a hidden gem for sure, and I think he's going to do great things with the Mintos this year. I know Timmy Leonard will have him going full tilt and give him lots of opportunity. And then you have Jaden Krause, who's another top-end goalie that is going to be in serious consideration for the draft. And Jaden will do very well. I think him and Ty Szymanski there. I think Ty will be good for Jaden and kind of ease him along. And that's sort of like a situation I allude to, like with Hildebrand and Watzke. Like, it would be nice, I think Jaden set up really good in PA, just because I think Jaden is a player that he'll rise to the occasion, but he's better being put in situations that he's more ready for, I guess, is what it is with him. But those 3 are going to have great seasons without a doubt. And then you look at Tisdale. Tisdale has Carter Ralston, who I really like, and I watched him in spring hockey. That's a nice player from the West Central program over there. And they took Turner Cron from Saskatoon, who I really like. D-man, big, strong D-man. You got another PA boy, Luke Bourdon there. That player is really strong. And actually, there's a whole bunch of players around this province. You look at Peyton Kostiak with the Regina Patsies. I was just talking with Darren McKechnie this morning about a few things with Peyton. And Peyton is another player that might be like Ashton Tate, where Peyton is one heck of a power forward. The kid is 6 feet tall. He's roughly around 199, 205 range. He seems to bounce around. His dad coaches the Regina Thunder football program, and his dad really doesn't have a big hockey background. But you know what? But he's a super guy. Has Peyton working with a lot of good people out of Regina, and I think Peyton could be one of those kids where I sort of the comparable with him would be Pichekut with the Raiders, where Dalen everyone knew who Dalen was. No one really paid much attention to him. No one thought he was going to be this high-end player. He didn't make the Sask first program, but yet this year he's the can't miss kid in the WHL, and everybody is like, wow, where did this kid come from? He always had it. It's just those kids, those bigger, stronger kids like that, they get those opportunities, and I see Peyton going that way too. I believe Peyton's going to get drafted 3rd, 4th round range, I believe, and I think whoever gets him is again one heck of a player. He's one of those kids where I watched him on Prairie Storm play, him and Ryan Zaremba, and Ryan is a really quick, speedy little forward, and Peyton's just this big diesel engine coming down the ice, but he's deceivingly fast. He's got a heck of a shot. He's very, very, very strong along the wall. He sort of reminds me of Raiden Zacharias a bit, but a bigger version of Raiden. I don't know if he's quite as skilled as Raiden, because I mean I don't want to knock Raiden, because I think Raiden is very, very good. But Peyton is definitely right up there with those guys, and he's another one of these kids that sort of fall into sort of that 1B group, but really that's debatable. That's really debatable, because I know Darren thinks the world of him, as his head coach, GM there with the Patsies, and I see Peyton having a really strong season once we get going here. So, and even you look over at Swift with Chris Kelleher, he's got a couple young players there that he really likes. That Brant Linklater and this other kid, and I'm just Hayden. I can't remember what his last name was.
Hudson Darby.
Sorry, Hudson. Yeah, there, Hudson. Darby. I don't know. I think it was Hayden. Geez, I apologize for that. But Darby was really strong with the U15 program, and he's very offensive minded. And Linklater is he's out of Regina. He played with the Notre Dame prep program, and he played spring hockey actually with my son Dane, and he very, very gritty sort of player, very strong. I think he'll excel in AAA, and I don't think he'll get much for points, because he's just not I don't think he's necessarily a natural point scorer, but boy, oh boy, he's a kid that's going to help a team win. He adds so much depth to a team, and he does all the little things that nobody exactly volunteers to. Like, he'll go into the corners, he'll fight in the dirty areas, and you put him and Darby together, and that Darby kid, that he's a good scorer, he's a good skater. You pair him up with the right winger, a player like that, and those two could do some really nice things down in Swift. So that could be a nice diamond in the rough for a couple teams to look at. And the other side of it too is, if you look at it provincially at how everything is this year, with the draft being in December and all these talented kids in the league this year, I mean, it bodes well for even the 05s and the 04s that weren't drafted or are trying to get opportunities, because there's just more eyes on you. And I hate to say it, and to sort of circle back to the Blazers, but when you go play the Blazers, it'll be like they should just set up a motel for the scouts outside the Latrace there, or the Rodham, because I mean, you're going to see a wealth of scouts at every game, providing we can have people in the rinks by then, which I'm hoping we can, because that's going to help that's going to have many peripheral spin-offs which will help many players outside of the draft, just because. And if an 04 has a good season, and maybe they didn't have, maybe they weren't drafted, or maybe they got dropped from their list or whatever. I mean, every player is one good season away from, breaking out of that mold and getting an opportunity, right? This is a good year for that to happen. For sure it is.
Yeah, and one thing I want to ask is, with how much of the draft classes at the Blazers, some of these kids might get lost a little more down lineups with all that high-end talent kind of going to one team. How do you think that's going to impact draft status and where some of those players might fall?
Well, I mean, I would like to say that's a good problem to have, but I don't know if it's going to be a good problem to have, because you're right. that could cause a little bit of like that'll definitely be problems for Scott Sissons, head coach there. He'll manage it for sure, and he'll try to make sure everyone gets eyes on the players, that sort of thing. But that definitely will be a tough thing to figure out for him. Like I think that's going to be like how do you? It's they're at an age where this is what hockey becomes. Once it becomes a business, and you got to produce. I mean, you got to go with the players that are going to help you win, and that's just. I mean, if it's an easy fix for if you're having if you're playing hard and you're working hard and you're doing all the little things that coach wants you to do, that's probably going to help your cause a lot more. So I guess Jonas would be sort of push back on the player to, hey, you want ice time? Earn it, absolutely, and I have no problem with that. I mean, will it cause problems? Well, possibly, but I mean that's all part of the process, right?
Well, I think some of the saving grace for the Blazers alone would be, with that many high-end draft picks, you're going to have probably scouts there every game. So they're going to see those guys deeper down the lineup a lot more than, say, they only had 3 high-end guys, right? So that could translate a little bit there. I would personally just kind of look at the situation. But like you said, it's if they're not performing, and well, they might not be playing as much either.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the nice thing about with their situation. Like in Battleford, where we have 4 players, and all 4 will get looks, but how many looks they get will depend on it'll depend on who we're playing. It'll depend on several other factors. Like Dawson's going to get a lot of looks. Obviously, I believe Trayson and Dane will get looks, and I like Owen Dick. I think that player has some good offensive upside. I think they're all going to get looks, but you're right. In most teams' cases, it's incumbent of the coaches and the programs and the managers to make sure they're getting that information out too, right? And we're lucky in Sask U18 AAA. I mean, that's why it's considered one of the best AAA leagues in all of Canada, because people work together. They try to make sure the information gets out, because I mean, with 12 teams in the league, the success of these players is a success for the league, right? And that's the nice part about Sask U18 AAA, is that everyone does really try to make sure people know who these players are, and even after they're drafted, like because this is unprecedented where we have the draft in December. But I do believe that you'll see a lot of collaboration this year for sure. I even more so, just because everyone wants to beat each other on a Thursday night or a Saturday or a Sunday game. But at the end of the day, I mean, people want to see these kids succeed. And that's really what it comes down to, because success for these kids is success for the league, success for recruitment. It gives the younger kids things to look up to and want to trying to get to. It gives them goals to try to reach. And I mean, like the Adam, I guess that would be the U7, U9, U13 groups. It gives them something to look up to and try to emulate and hopefully stay involved in the game, because that's the other thing I hope. That's the other concern I have with this pandemic, the way it's playing out. But it's looking good. Like we're going to get back to hockey in the fall time, which is a positive.
I think hockey might be one of those sports that might be all right with the pandemic situation. A lot of kids grew up around it and love it enough. I think they should stay involved. The financial thing might run into issue with some families, but I think you might see the damage a little more in the sports that kids might not be as heavily interested into, like, I don't know, soccer, baseball, or something that, some kids might be on the fence about. They might just say, nah, I'm done with it. But I think hockey should be okay.
Yeah, I think so too. And and the one good thing is, and I can talk from personal experience with my boys playing with the Stars program. They were like, Sean Robinson was fantastic with us, absolutely fantastic. I'm a single parent, and it's like, hey Kevin, okay, here's the cost. What can you afford per month, how you can pay? And we just found a way for the boys to play, and I mean, and that's from my own personal experience. So, and I know most programs are really good about that. Because they want to see the kids play too. Like it's not, yes, you need money to make sure that it's there for the programs, but that's one good thing about the U18 AAA league is they will, if if you have the talent, they will do everything they can to make sure to find a way that you can find a way to make sure you can pay so they can play. That's at the end of the day, you still got to pay, but but at least they're good at, like, at least there's that bridge there, and most programs are very, very good about that. From talk with other families and that sort of thing, especially during the pandemic, because, well, I mean, it's hit a lot of people hard, and hard in ways that we probably don't even realize yet, and we won't realize for a couple of years down the road, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. One more thing I want to get to before we kind of run out of time here is I was talking to Mike Glawson here. He's the head coach of U18 AAA team in Calgary, and just want to get your perspective on this question. The draft being in December, how do you think that's going to impact players and the pressure around having a draft mid-season? This is the first time the WHL's had that, and I'm just going to get your opinion on how some of these kids might react to that situation.
I think the pressure will be there regardless of whether it's in May or whether it's in December. I think everyone's happy it's in December because players are hoping we can get to games so people can scouts and people can actually watch them play. And I think everyone's on that side so much that I don't know if people necessarily see it as a bad thing. I think people were more worried that they were going to do a draft in May or June previously, like as in coming up here, and people are more worried about people not seeing them play, and the fact that it got delayed, I think, made a few people breathe easier. And I mean, there's pros and cons to it both ways, but I think I see it as a pro personally, because it's a chance for the players to be separated a little bit, and even between the U18 AAA and the U18 AA here in Saskatchewan, you're going to see quality players in both leagues. You're going to see a lot of quality in both leagues, and it actually even helps U18 AA programs because they traditionally don't get very many scouts at those games unless it's some junior B scouts or some junior A scouts, but they usually don't get the dub scouts at those games unless there's a signed player that's playing there because of whatever reason. So I mean, that's the positive spin-offs for there. Like, you look at that River Kings program in Saskatoon, there's a lot of quality 06s that are not going to be playing in the AAA in the U18 AAA league just because of numbers. And there's still some good depth in that outside of these obvious players. There's a lot of depth there. So I mean, that bodes well for those guys too. So at least this way, having the draft in December is a chance for people to be seen, if nothing else. And I know there's probably some antsy parents that are thinking, oh, well, my son's going to be playing this, or if he's not on the ice like he would have been in U15 AA. But I mean, what people tend to realize is the programs that are drafting, the scouts that are watching, everyone involved in hockey feels like them. There's no difference between the hockey parent side and the scout side or the management side or the coaching side. Everyone feels the same way. So that's the good common bond here, is everyone's just trying to make the best of it and make the right decisions. And people know, and by this age, everyone knows everyone's playing history, to a certain degree. And there's enough people to ask out there, and there's enough people to get your information from, and try to formulate some sort of opinion, right? So I personally, I see it as a positive thing. Like, at least that's a good step for the WHL to try and postpone it and try to give these kids their time in the sun, not during a pandemic, and do it when it's a bit more of a celebration. Everyone can be excited for these kids, and they get their sort of hoopla behind it, right? It's nice to see them get the accolades with all the amount of years they've all put into it. So personally, that's how I see it. I mean, obviously opinions can vary, but that's how I see it, because even for myself, it gives me a chance to watch some games, and I can actually watch games. Hopefully I can watch games. I mean, I'm knock on wood, I'm hoping I can watch games.
No, I think I definitely agree, and I think it's going to push a lot of those kids who might not necessarily be at the top, and maybe in the middle tier, that if I have some good games, I can climb the draft boards, and there's going to be more eyes on you. So I think it's going to push kids. It might get to some kids if they hit a bit of a dry spout, but the coaching support system, I'm sure, is great with most teams, so they can help them through that. And I think it'll be good for players' development overall.
Yeah, I agree. And, and truthfully, because I watched my 04 go through it, I'm seeing my 06 go through it. I mean, the big thing is love the game, love the sport, love the game. You look at Patrick Marleau last night. Like that. If everyone could understand how that guy feels at his age, and there he's getting teary-eyed, and it's. I mean, do you think he ever cared about the draft? Do you think he ever cared about any of that stuff? He just played the game because he had so much passion for it. He loved it. If you do it for the right reasons and you're pushing yourself and you want to be a better player or a better person, good things happen. And that, to me, that's where the players need to just breathe. Like, take a deep breath. You know what? If you didn't get your 3 points this game, the sun will rise tomorrow. Everyone can see when somebody's had an off game. It's not the end of the world. They're going to probably watch you at least a handful of other games. So just, because I think sometimes we get a little too caught up in thinking that that decision was made on October 23rd at such and such a time. Like, oh, that's it. That was the moment where I messed up. Well, no. It was by the time you get from your scouts to your regional scouts to the director of scouting to the war room to the draft room. I mean, there might have been 50 people that have talked about your abilities. So when they formulate their opinions, it's based on a lot of knowledge and a lot of input. And yeah, you know what? Everyone can understand having a bad game. My God, if Sidney Crosby or Connor McDavid can have a bad game, I'm pretty sure they can accept that a 2006 player from Saskatchewan, can have an off night on a Thursday night and he, maybe didn't sleep good. Maybe he's arguing with his girlfriend. Who knows? Like, teenagers are funny that way, right?
Yeah.
It's, but they're very emotional, and that's for myself. That's the big thing is love what you do, and good things will happen. It goes. I think that can be used into every aspect of life, whether it's your work life or or social life or your sport life or like whatever path you're using that towards. But these kids are lucky. The ones that get to play U18 AAA, like I can probably show you hundreds of kids who would give their right arm to play in this league. So this is a real honor. It's a real privilege to play in there. And you know what? Come to that rink ready, love the game, have fun, and good things will happen. Listen to your coaches. They're all there to support you. I don't know of any coach in this league that wants to see anyone fail. So I'm pretty sure they're all in good hands,
Yeah, exactly. And you make a good point there. You're going back to Patty Marleau situation, and he's watching that interview. It almost makes you want to tear up watching and to see the passion in that guy's eyes. So.
Oh God, yeah, so true. And honestly, how can you not respect and like a guy like that? Like that to me, that's what hockey's about right there, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Kevin, we're running out of time here. I want to thank you for joining us. You're going to be a frequent guest on the show. I'm sure we'll have lots more time to talk about the 06 class and AAA League for next year. But until next time, thank you, and we'll see you then. Okay, thanks for having me on. It was nice to be on there and nice to get this rolling. Awesome. Thank you. We'll see you. That's Kevin Henry of Western Elite Hockey Prospects. He's going to be a frequent guest talking about the league and, some of his training programs that he's got going on. So, well, thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you all next week.